Hung Chuy's journey is a remarkable story of resilience, determination, and entrepreneurial success. Arriving as a refugee with little more than hope and a willingness to work hard, Hung overcame immense challenges to build a property portfolio valued at over $20 million. Through strategic investments, calculated risks, and an unwavering commitment to creating opportunity, he transformed his circumstances and built strategic brokers to what it is today. Hung shares the lessons he learned in this episode. Along the way, he navigated a lot of uncertainty and overcame setbacks to identify opportunities in the market and develop the mindset required to build long-term success. His story is a powerful reminder that where you start does not determine where you finish. Whether you're someone interested in property investing, entrepreneurship, or stories of perseverance against the odds, this conversation today will provide you valuable insights and inspiration for anyone who's looking to create their own path to success. Good to have you on, mate.
Awesome. Thanks for inviting me on the show.
I learned a lot of lessons from you, so it's a privilege to have you on the show today.
Cheers, Aiden. I think with, your personal journey, I think it's just the difference that we do in our business is that we try to treat every customer like it's our own deal. So I think that's a really important piece. I think with a lot of guys out there, they're just either looking at it as a business transaction or something that's going to earn them a commission or something like that. I guess our vision is always, if I was the customer, what would I do? And from there, it's always about building a long-term relationship, not something that just is an overnight thing. I love to see people along the journey and watch them, grow from ground up, from ground zero all the way to becoming hugely successful.
And so one of the things that I want to talk to you about today is it took to get to where you are, but the lessons you've learnt along the way. So one thing I want to rewind all the way back to is your earliest memories as a refugee, and paint the picture for the listeners of what that would have been like growing up.
Yeah, look, I don't know if I can take too much credit to being, a refugee as such, but I was born in a refugee camp. We were really fortunate in the 80s that they were allowing, obviously, refugees to come in, and I was only 6 months old when my parents got, sponsored into the country, were granted access. But I think the journey before that is probably the part that shows a lot of resilience from my father. My father was, they went through, for anyone listening who knows anything about the killing fields in Cambodia, they went through very, very traumatic period of, civil unrest with I think it was like 1/3 of the Cambodian population were murdered, during that period. And they reckon it's one of the worst, worst periods of all time when you compare it to other wars and whatnot. This guy was basically murdering his own people. So if you were smart, you had a uni degree, you owned a business, you had any sort of success, they were just pretty much getting rid of you. That was the way that they saw themselves controlling the country. So what my family did is they ran off and they basically fled to the farms to pretend to be farmers, left all their belongings behind, and they were stuck there for many, many, many years. And
so it was all about that perception of trying to make it look as though they weren't wealthy, they didn't have anything, correct. And so they wouldn't be killed.
So they lost literally everything. So the family were pretty much farmers, and they had to pretend to be farmers or be farmers for a long time. But then the war broke out to the farms, and basically anyone who lived out in the farms, they were forcing them to pretty much work 16 hours a day, picking rice, looking after cattle, whatever it was. They sleep, they get a bowl of what we call we call it congee, but it's basically rice mashed up with a few things. That's all they eat all day. So everyone's malnourished. People were just dying from malnourishment, disease. And they weren't allowed to have showers. So imagine, they were allowed to shower once every week or two or whatever it was. Dad learned how to catch birds, eat bugs, anything that would give him a little bit of protein to survive. And that went on for pretty much the prime of his life, between when he was 18 all the way through to when he was in his 20s, right? Yeah. No education. So after that kind of resolved itself, the war finished, I think the country was left in ruins. Everyone was living in poverty. There was the only one option. My dad had a few blocks of gold and stuff saved. Yeah. And the only thing they had was to jump on a refugee boat and go, look, we're going to get on a makeshift boat and try to sail our way to Australia. They got caught along the way, ended up getting put on a boat which then got caught on the Thai border. The Thai police said, or Thai military, so the border patrol were like, well, we've got, our jails are full. We've got nothing, we don't know what to do with these refugees. So they decided to get a tugboat, pull them out in the middle of the ocean, shoot some holes in the hull, and just left them out for dead, which they went cast away for a long, long time. I don't know how long, but they were dying. Rain came. They were able to drink the rainwater to survive and crash into an island, which they were saved by a fishing boat. I don't know, I think it was a week or 2 weeks later. I can't really talk on behalf of my father. He doesn't know how many days. And then the fishing boat found them, took them to their village, basically put them in shackles and locked them up. And then he was stuck in jail. And then he had the gold, bribed their way out. And then a year and a half later, my dad goes, hey, let's do it again. But none of the other family members wanted to go. That first journey, we had literally every single member of the family. A whole generation was going to be wiped out, basically, on that boat. I
mean, they don't really have another choice, though, right? Like, go back to your country or give it another shot.
Yeah. Well, they didn't. Like, if they were just... The life that was there was no life. It was just, it was just terrible. So that was their only option. Then the second time around, they ended up to the Thai border again. And guess what? The Thai border patrol caught them again.
Went back into jail. Instead
of taking them and sinking their boat into the ocean, this time they put them into the jails, and then which eventually became refugee camps. So they pushed them into the refugee camps, and then they ended up...
going to jail is probably safer than going home at that point. So
100%. Yeah, 100%. So they put them in a refugee camp in Thailand, and I think they were stuck there for 3 years or something like that. In the second year, I was born, so 2 and a bit years later. I must have been bored there, didn't have condoms or something, so that's how I was created. I can't think of it.
When were you old enough to sort of appreciate this story? Because, do you have any vivid memories of, growing up?
Yeah, look, I think I have memories, obviously, of not having much money, obviously, but working really hard. My dad would work, mum would sew all day, would sell stuff at the markets, do anything to make a bit of coin. And I think that kind of instilled a lot of work ethic in me. Obviously, living in conditions, I think we started off in an apartment. There was heaps of us in a 2-bedroom apartment, just living in it together, mattresses on the floor, and, sleeping everywhere. And that's kind of the vivid memories of all of that. But, I had a lot of fun. I used to remember dancing to Michael Jackson. Funny as the Michael Jackson movie came out recently, I have all these memories coming back of me playing it. I had one tape, and it was Michael Jackson. And I just played him on repeat all the time. It's crazy.
I'm sure that sets the scene for the resilience that you'll require throughout your life to go through, building your own business. And would I be right in saying that those initial exposures to what your family had to go through to create a life in Australia would be a strong foundation for you building Strategic Brokers to what it is today?
Oh, absolutely. I think in the background, my father instilled 2 major things in me. Is that, the value of a dollar, in a sense, that, he has a scarcity mindset. So everything is precious. You can't let anything just be wasted. If we wasted a grain of rice, he used to smack me with a bamboo stick. You can't do that to kids nowadays, all right? But back then, we'd get smacked for everything. He was a tough prick, but that's how he cared, right? And I think I didn't really recognize that until I was an adult, right? And I think when growing up, we didn't have a good relationship because of the way he treated me and things like that. But I think he taught me a lot about the value of every single dollar, that, you can't let anything go to waste. I think the big core memories around him also was that he instilled good values in me besides all the other stuff, So I think the good values is kind of what our community was. It's we looked after each other, and you always look after your friends, your family. And I think that's the biggest part of what made our business successful, was the care factor. I think a lot of people out there, they don't have that same, they're just in it for themselves or whatever it is, but we have this thing where respect is giving and helping people and treating them well. So
I think one of the things I do want to sort of ask you about, we see what's happened in Belfast recently with the beheading and obviously the Bondi shooting, and there is this discussion at the moment around quite a controversial topic around multiculturalism. What do you think Australia would lose if we stopped welcoming people in who were seeking a better life?
Yeah, look, I think Australia is a multicultural country, our country's been built on migration. That's how we've become such a wonderful country. Obviously, there's going to be bad eggs in every bunch, right?
Yeah.
And that's just part of society. But there's bad eggs in the existing bunch that we have here. There's bad eggs 100%. In the new ones. It's just whatever the media spins between it, right? But a lot of really hardworking people they just want an opportunity in life, and I think we need people. We actually need people to help build the country, to do jobs that people who already have been here for generations don't want to do. So everyone needs a chance, and I think if there's pros and cons of everything, but I think that exists amongst existing people or new people coming in.
Was there a point where you realised your family was going to be okay in Australia? Like, obviously you weren't quite young to digest all of this information and what your family went through, but
in all honesty, it was only until I didn't really appreciate it growing up. I was probably in amongst all of those naughty kids running around because I live next to the Housing Commission, and we were naughty kids too, so we just didn't know any better. Yeah. That's just the way that things were around there. I grew up around Cabramatta, and I could tell you it was a whole different world back then. Yeah. Yeah. It was such a dangerous place to grow up, to be fair. Yeah. You're surrounded by heroin junkies. You got, everywhere I rode my push bike, somebody would try to roll me. Is that insane, right? You couldn't turn a corner without somebody trying to rob you at knife point or something like that. There was a whole different era back then. I used to be scared to take my bike through certain alleyways because I knew I was going to lose it. Yeah. Lost a few bikes, lost my shoes once, lost my wallet, my phone. There's heaps of incidents. But it also, I feel like going through or living through that taught me, I guess, how to really identify human character between good and bad people. And I could almost smell it straight away when I meet people nowadays.
Who's a
genuinely who you can trust. But then again, I still didn't learn my lessons in my 20s because I still trusted people with money, with business that I shouldn't have,
I think that's part of building a business, though. You're gonna, and I'm sure that'll form part of what you talk about in terms of your setbacks and that kind of thing. But one thing I do want to consider, your story is very different to the last two guests I've had on the podcast. So I had Brad Nicolaides and is my last guest, and John Killick. Both of these guys have spent almost 30 years in prison, and a lot of their upbringing, they talked about, involving themselves with gambling. They eventually became bank robbers, and their life was forged on, a lot of the circumstances they had in their early years. And I think coming to a country like Australia and not having that wealth behind you, finding yourself in Cabramatta, was there ever do you think a point where you could have gone the wrong way?
Oh, 100%. Nearly every single point between literally year 7 all the way through to when I was probably about 17, 18. But obviously when I got into uni, then obviously I could see my clear path. But I think up until year 10, I got into, I was fighting all the time. Like my school, it was one of the roughest schools out there in a sense. They used to have police on playground duty. I remember in year 7, there was a big fight down at the bus bay where a whole bunch of kids dressed in black came to my school with machetes to come and chop up the year 12 guys. And then the whole school turned against them. They all bashed these guys in front of the bus bay. Teacher got sliced.
Jesus.
It was insane. I was in year 7, right? And that's the kind of school we're at. In our school back then, if you had a problem with someone, you'd have to fight them toe to toe.
Sort it out physically.
But everyone would come down to the creek, down at the back of the shops there, and you'd fight one-on-one, and everyone would stand around and cheer you on. And then things would break out where guys had bigger groups and their friend lost, and their whole group would just jump in and belt the crap out of the other group. So it was literally, that's what happened on a weekly basis at our school.
So you found yourself in some...
I was hanging around a lot of naughty kids, man. I was so many naughty kids.
Was there a point where you made a specific decision? Do you have a memory of a time when you made a decision to choose a better life for yourself rather than making...
I did. And I think I shared it once on a potty. I think about year 10, I got into a fight with a guy and he built the shit out of me. And, I thought I'd win the fight, but, my nose was half broken, my lip was busted, spitting out blood everywhere. I just remember after that moment, it was almost like a traumatic moment when I actually go, shit, I don't want to end up dead or, wherever I'm going to end up, because there were people getting sliced up, stabbed, all sorts of things. And I was thinking back at it and going, when I reflect, I was always a smart kid. I was an opportunity cost cleared. I was gifted in the sense of numbers, and I had a very good brain on me. But just had a rough path during that period. So I think I was just angry at the world because my mother passed when I was 9. So I think I didn't really deal with it.
Yeah.
Didn't know how to deal with it. The parents were always just like, just suck it up kind of thing, and move on with your life.
And you think like your parents came all that, I mean, you like your family's come all the way from where you grew up to find a better life, and here you are, you get shanked down by the creek kind of thing. It's not probably not the way you wanted to, the best way for the story to end, given the amount of sacrifice that they...
Oh, of course. And like, as a kid, you don't have any idea the sacrifices they made. They used to tell me the stories all the time, and I'm just like, Dad's telling me the story, And as an adult now, I'm trying to do an autobiography on him. I'm trying to record everything, understand every single moment that he felt or everything that he dealt with. Like us boys, we're little rascals until we're adults, right? Yeah. So I think I didn't really mature until I was a lot older, and I think the turning point for me was actually when my dad got cancer, and then got really sick, and then got diagnosed terminal, but they misdiagnosed him. He's still alive today, which is insane, crazy, right? Yeah. I think, but that pivotal moment was when I turned and go, shit. I really need to understand my dad's story. I'm like, I've taken him for granted for all these years. It's just having this opportunity in this country to allow me to be where I am today is incredible.
What particular aspects of Australia do you think, in the more broader picture of where you're at now, have helped you succeed? Like, we look at Australia's healthcare system, your opportunities financially.
The quality of life here, our minimum standards are so high that even if you're at the bottom of society, you can go to the same cafe as the top of society. There's just not a massive segregation like in some countries. So, for instance, if you went to Cambodia tomorrow, there's going to be kids begging on the street, and right next to them there's a Rolls Royce. So you've just got such a big gap between the bottom and the top. Over here, such a fortunate country, you could literally have any opportunity, you can get into a house with a 5% scheme. You can get an everyday job and still earn $80,000 a year. Right?
One of the things though that I really want to sort of break down with you though is you've been on both sides of the coin. So you've come to Australia and experienced great poverty in terms of where you've come from. And so obviously Australia is really good at supporting those minorities that are socioeconomically disadvantaged through different schemes, whether it be welfare and that kind of thing. But then on the flip side of the coin, if you do accumulate a lot of wealth, there obviously is a lot of like tax, and a lot of people discuss in the media how heavily taxed a lot of Australians are that earn good income. Have you ever considered like going to other countries like, Dubai or Singapore, where there isn't the same level of tax now that you have accumulated wealth? And has your perception of your upbringing and your story changed with the wealth that you've generated?
No, look, I have a lot of respect for this country. I pay a lot of taxes, and I'm happy to pay my taxes, right? I just wish they'd spend my taxes better. That's the only thing. Obviously, the smart people would, minimize their taxes, use good structures, have good advisors, and it's kind of a shame that the everyday man can't get that advice. But you have to get to a certain status of wealth before you really open your doors to all these quality advice, right? The average guy, or nearly everyone that I know that's wealthy nowadays, they pay a much lower tax rate than any hardworking Australian in a sense, right? Because they've created good systems, good schemes, like they've thought about their structuring before they've done anything. But what a land of opportunity. I don't think ever to leave this country to go create something elsewhere, unless it was a business that was obviously multinational. Then obviously, you'd have to be smart with your decision making. You set up your company somewhere else. You'd move to set that up, because if they're going to spend your taxes, make sure they spend it well, right? But if you are creating a multinational, it just makes sense to start your hub somewhere else. At the end of the day, you have to make smart decisions for yourself too, right? But I just think that taxes are taxes, and it's what helps create this country, make it one of the most livable. Pretty much, I think it's the most livable country in the world. The more I travel,
and I think I did mention like healthcare as well, like the taxes we pay and the opportunities we have with Medicare and that kind of thing. In terms of like we can go to hospital, and have ambulance, surgery and that kind of thing. Which you go to a country like the Philippines and they have to pay out of pocket exorbitant amount of money to access life-saving medical treatment.
It's insane all around the world, right? If somebody in your family gets sick, that you can pretty much bankrupt the whole family.
Sure.
Nearly every single time. Like we have one of our staff in the Philippines, and she's unwell, and she has to pay a lot of money to get a surgery done. And Jay, who's in our team, he decided to put a thing up to see if the team would donate to help.
Yep.
And my team, such generous crew, we raised enough just between our team alone to pay for all the medical work, right? But imagine she didn't have that. Yeah, she would have had nothing to fall back on. She wouldn't be able to get the medical work, and literally would have to just deal with it or die almost, in a sense. So, and then you look at the States, it's insane. Like I've seen horror stories of people getting sick and literally losing the whole family fortune, everything they've worked for. We're so fortunate to have the Medicare system here.
Absolutely.
It's such a blessing, and I think a lot of people take it for granted how good the system is.
Yeah. And look, I want to get into that and discussing, how you built your team and as you built your business. Do you think that you talk about a lot of these people within the company likely share similar values as you? Do you think that where you come from and the type of person that you want to associate yourself with and the values sort of comes out now in the people that you hire? And what do you sort of look for?
Yeah, 100%. So the most of my team, crazily enough, are friends or family. Pretty much nearly all of the team.
Like a good business person would probably say to you, that's a bad situation to end up in.
I have this thing where you hear all these sayings that just get repeated, but that's from
don't go into business with family or friends.
I'm on the flip side of that in a sense, because the friends and family that I have or hold close to, I know their values. I know their core being. I know that they're hardworking. But maybe other people aren't fortunate enough to be in a position where they've met or they have family members or they have friends who are just as hardworking or share the same values as them.
Yeah.
So I think I was able to identify a lot of these people along the way, and it was like a team. We're all a bunch of rascals. We've all had hard upbringings. Yeah. We all have hard work ethic. We all have this core value of care. Yeah. Those are pretty much the core values of the business. If you have those, I don't care if you can't speak to someone face to face. I don't care if you don't know what other those three core pillars that will get you really, really far in my industry.
Yeah. I think, to be honest, I felt that when I first sat down with Hung over a Zoom meeting to discuss like the first home buyer's deposit scheme, and I wonder how much of that has to be attributed to your upbringing and the experiences and circumstances you grew up in, and why that is a reason why the business has been so successful today with the people you've surrounded yourself with who come from a similar upbringing.
Yeah, so I think my high level thoughts around it is just be a good person, right? So I think that's kind of just instilled in us. And I think growing up with my family, I grew up around a lot of people around temples and stuff like that as well. Yeah. So I was kind of raised in a temple, and I was really taught about good karma. It's kind of one of the things that's kind of instilled in me, is that if you put enough good deeds out there, good things will come back to you. Not expecting it to come back at all, but I mean, like, the more good things you put out, I give up my time all the time just to help people. And I don't know if people see it sometimes, but it doesn't matter how much money you have. You're like, you got to be a good human, So I think because I started with nothing as well, I can always some people in my industry or in other industries or whatever, they might have started off with a very wealthy family or wherever it is, but because I've been at rock bottom multiple times, when I meet someone, I feel like I can put myself in your shoes every day of the week, depending on what position you're at. I've been there, so I can help. I can maybe give my 2 cents around what worked for me, what didn't work for me, and maybe that will give you enough info to make some really solid moves in your life. So it really brings me joy when I see people building people up. I don't know why, but it's always been built in me.
Yeah, I think you helped me with that experience a lot, and I was very proud of what I was able to achieve at such a young age. And I think that, a lot of that, I think it's thanks to the way that you supported me through that process. But one of the more honest questions I have for you is, has money changed you? Like, do you think in what ways? And has there ever been vanity in it? And have you had to check yourself at any point? And what's the sort of the challenges now that you face with money that are different to what challenges you faced when you didn't have money?
I think there's always a saying, money doesn't really change people. What it does is amplify who they originally were. So if you're a shit person, it's going to make you a mega shit person, right? But I feel like obviously having money is just giving me more freedom to do more and help more people, which is actually, if anything, it's been better for everything, right?
Yeah.
And it just makes life decisions a lot easier.
Yeah.
Like anything that you want to do now, you've got the freedom, right? Versus previously, you don't have the freedom. You're trapped in the circle of money in a sense.
Yeah.
Until you get out of it, then that's kind of it. It's such a big thing to have financial freedom. Yeah. Once you have financial freedom, it's almost like anything that you've ever wanted to do, you can choose to do. Rather than having to force yourself to do something. Yeah. We often say no to clients nowadays. Before, if somebody treated us badly, we'd be like, "Oh, please,
we don't want to work with you."
But now we can say, "Look, we don't. Sorry, I don't think we're a good fit." You don't understand the value we add. You're chasing us down for dollars and cents because that's where you're seeing the value.
Yeah.
But you're not seeing the value in the strategy we build. So. Yeah. But that's now it's a different world that we're in. But it's very rare that we kind of bump into people. We meet a lot of our clients through business to business or through podcasting, so they kind of know who we are. They've resonated with the characters already. Yeah.
So I think it may be good to provide a bit. I know this is my podcast. I really want it to be your story. I don't want it to be about me, but I guess how I came about across you. So I was actually referred to you by one of my mother's family friends, Georgina Sawyer, and she's a conveyancer, and she mentioned you and said you're a great broker. And as I said at the start when we were talking, was I went to another gentleman. He tried to get me a loan through the St. George Bank, and it was for a significantly lower amount, I think $200,000 less. We went through the first home buyer's deposit scheme. I think I was in the top 2% of savers for my age at the time in New South Wales. Is the reason you do what you do?
Oh, yeah, 100%. It's everyone has the way I think about it is like a lot of people take financial advice from people out there who
aren't in the position that
they might have. You don't know their story. They don't tell you exactly how they made their money. Were they rich before? Did they inherit money? But if you're going to get advice from someone, you want to get advice from someone that's actually kind of done what you want to achieve, right? So if you're trying to achieve something, if you're starting at a net wealth position of like 200 grand now or whatever it is, and you want to get that to a $6-7 million net wealth position, would you go to some guy that said something to you at the barbecue, or some guy who inherited everything, never turned a dollar into another few $1 million? Or would you go to someone who started from ground zero and built that up to a substantial wealth position? So I think that's kind of the core. Like, you wouldn't go to somebody to do something that's never done themselves.
So who did you look up to? Because before I said the idea or the concept that don't go into business with family or friends, you've obviously completely ignored that advice, and no doubt you've probably received that from someone along the line. So who was it you looked up to, and like growing up, and how did you find yourself in finance? Was this always something you wanted to get into?
To be honest, I never had really a mentor or a real role model. I kind of just winged it the whole way. Yeah. And I think I'm a person of freedom of choice kind of guy. Yeah. And I think I just accumulated a lot of smart moves throughout time, made a lot of mistakes, honestly. There's probably, looking back, if I could go and maybe get advice from somebody who's done it, like I just said, instead of just jumping into things head first, I would have probably accelerated my path a lot faster. Yeah. I think getting into finance itself, it was kind of, I was a mathematical genius as a kid. Like I could do numbers like instantly, just pop quizzes. You could throw me random numbers, I could solve it, right? So it just made sense to get into some of the numbers. So I studied accounting and finance in uni. But it's funny enough, that degree does nothing for a mortgage broker. You have to actually do a Cert 4, and that's all you needed to become a mortgage broker. It took me 1 week in Fortitude Valley while I was drinking every night and partying and then coming out with a little degree. It didn't make you a mortgage broker. What makes you a mortgage broker? It's like a bricklayer. You got to keep laying. Once you see a bricklayer when they lay their first few bricks,
stripes.
Yeah, correct. It's more like it's very similar to a trade the way mortgage brokers work. Yeah. It's about thousands and thousands of files you've seen and how to deal with them. You can see the aftermath. I've been around for 15 years now, so I've seen I'm pretty sturdy with how my clients the clients I help to approve. Right, I don't really have any of my clients ever defaulting. Right? So a lot of mortgage businesses out there have a pretty deep, a certain amount of clients that default off their book. I honestly don't think we've ever had clients who've actually had to sell their house. Like the bank has had to foreclose on them because I think we're pretty smart with how far we push the boundaries with them when we do give them the loan application. And it's more than just an algorithm sometimes. The family position, who's got your back, who's support. It's kind of got this feeling where it's a gut feeling over. I've seen deals where I go, this guy, you shouldn't give him money. And I'm like, look, sorry, we can't help you because what you're asking for, we don't feel right. So
what you're saying is you don't specifically just look at the numbers in someone's bank account, but also the context in which they're in as well. If they have a family member who can be a guarantee, who already has property and that kind of thing, obviously comes into the equation.
Yeah, I think it's more just, it's the overall spending habits, just the human they are. You see them racking up 80 grand in credit card debt and then mum gives them 100 grand, this person's in trouble, right? You go through the bank statements, you see Crown Casino every Friday night. Hitting $3,000 withdrawals. You've got a problem here. We got to analyze that stuff too before we go and say, hey, we're going to hand you $1 million now from the bank. Sign our name against it. We've got to make sure that you're going to be good for it too. Because the worst thing for us is when the client goes into foreclosure, because they're going to guess what? They're going to come back to the broker and say, why did you give the money?
When they default on their loan.
Go, what did you do here? Now who's liable? So you got to be very careful. But at the same time, if the client deserves money and they've really thought about it, we'll push them to a fund that's more aggressive. Somebody who's going to give them more borrowing power to get them there.
Yeah. Do you have a strict kind of screening process in that respect when you look at people's spending, their habits, maybe other factors around that you sort of use to guide what clients you do take on board?
Look, not necessarily. Obviously, we take most clients on board. I think its main thing is that they've got buffers in place, so they're not buying a place and then living week to week. If you're going into a mortgage, you need a buffer, so you got $1 million mortgage. You want to see $20,000, $30,000 minimum in an offset account just as a rainy day fund, because the worst thing you can do, interest rates rose 3 times, right? Recently. Now all of a sudden your repayments have jumped up massively. Your car blows out and you've only got week to week and you're budgeting week to week. You're going to be in trouble. You can't just go into a mortgage without creating some sort of backing or something to fall back on.
What property mistakes feel smart when you're making it, but almost always end in regret?
I think with property itself, people buying property for the sake of buying property is, I think, one of the biggest mistakes. I think you've got to think about it, why you're buying the property. If it's a principal place of residence, somewhere you're going to live, that everyone just says fair enough. But at the same time, what's your goal with that? Isn't it easier to rent inferior when you can put that money into an investment property in the right growth area, which is a better asset, which is going to make you a lot more money than buying something that might not ever go up in value, right?
Sure.
So, for instance, you look at a property, you go, look, I can afford this one bedder that's 35 square meters in a 1,000-unit complex, or do I get a full house for that same price from Sydney in let's call it one of the cheaper markets in Perth, for instance, and you're buying towards Armadale for 600 grand and you get a house on 700 square meters. That one bedroom unit for 600 or that house for 600 that's rented for $600 a week.
I think that's the discussion we've had recently too, right? We're talking about, so I bought my first property for 660,000, which Hung helped. He was the broker for that. What advice would you give to other people looking to get into the market or that are already in the market in terms of, financial stress testing, the due diligence that you should run when, speaking with not only brokers, but also real estate and conveyancers to make the best decision?
Yeah, so it's a hard one because everyone takes advice from people they think is the right one to give advice. I think if you are looking to build a foundation around, I guess, property, or you're trying to use property as your vehicle to grow wealth, I think you've got to tune into as many podcasts as you can. There are some really good ones out there. I run a show called How I Met My Broker. If you tune into the 7 episodes there, I've showcased a really, really talented people who've built fortunes from nothing. So if you listen to a lot of these shows, find someone accounting, find someone on property, learn, so get educated through podcasts, then push it further. What's going to be the next level to that? I think it's not just taking advice directly from people you like to randomly think, or from a barbecue or anything like that. Go and educate yourself. And the easiest way to educate is through podcasting. I found I listen to probably 2 podcasts a week at bare minimum, on topics that I like, and I find that I absorb, even if you absorb 1 point constantly, you times that by every gym session that you do, or whatever it is, multiply that by a whole year, and all of a sudden you've got a wealth of knowledge, right? So if you really want to make a decision around using property as your vehicle, find some good podcasters who do it well, and just put a whole list, put that all together. And I could almost guarantee you within 3 to 6 months, you will know way more than any family member, anyone else out there. You'll be the top 1% of 1% of knowledge in that space. Yeah.
It's good advice. But one person that I know have spent a lot of time around, you didn't mention you had any mentors, but I do know that you spent some time with Mark Burris.
Yeah, so I was when I started my broking career, I started off buying a shitty mortgage broking business that went bankrupt 15 years ago, and ran that for 2 years. Then I went to a Big Four bank and worked my way up from the front desk reader up to a business banker. And then I moved to Yellow Brick Road. That's where the connection with Mark Burris started. We built that franchise up in Randwick, and it became the #1 lending franchise for like 4 consecutive years after that.
Wow.
Before it moved then we transitioned into strategic brokers, which we still aggregate. For those who understand, we still use their platform to write deals through them. So we go through YBR aggregation, which is owned by Mark Burris. So we've still got a very strong connection with him. Throughout those years, I idolized Mark. He actually, what he's done from ground zero, the stories he's shared with me. Yeah. I've actually sat at a bar, and he doesn't drink very often, that guy. But once, I can't remember how many years ago, but in Tasmania on a conference, I was able to get a lot of his time and just sit there and drink with him for a few hours and just talk about everything. So, got the hands on.
What's he like as a person? Because, I mean, if you listen to his podcast, Straight Talk, he is very, he just shoots the shit very, very forward, very honest.
Yeah.
Is that what he's like in person, or is he?
Yeah, no, he's like anyone, like us.
Yeah.
He'll crack a joke with you.
Yeah.
But when it comes to the business on the table, he'll make decisions fast.
Yeah.
And he's I like his approach because I'm quite similar in the way that I do things. Is like there's no point fluffing around. There's no bullshit around it. Let's just be honest with each other.
Yeah.
Like, what value does this add? Let's just cut the crap out. Yeah. Are you adding value? Is this a business decision when you're making business decisions, or is this an emotional decision? Yeah. Just lay it all out on the table, and then if we need to put some emotion in it, fair enough. These are the reasons. But he's a straight shooter, and I think a lot of people in the country have a lot of respect for him in the sense of he is a genuinely very intelligent guy, like super intelligent, but also very humble in a sense too. Which makes him brilliant. I actually want him to. I'd love for him to run for Prime Minister if he would.
I think he would do a good job.
I don't know if he wants to do it, but I'm actually going to have him on my podcast. Or was meant to have him on my podcast this month, and he's had to postpone it for a few more months. So
I was gonna see if you could get him on mine, but I don't know if that's.
Oh mate, I'm having a challenge getting him on mine.
Yeah,
I've been trying for like the last 6 months.
Well, I did. I listened to his podcast, and when he was like, with his kids and that, and how he's outsourced all of the cooking, the school drop-offs and everything to build around his, and you hear the stories about the boxing he was doing and the way he's like sort of works his days. And I mean, It's very admirable also, like what he's been able to accomplish. And
Oh, it's insane.
Yeah.
It's absolutely insane. Like this is probably for another podcast, but
like every minute's planned, every decision. It's just
he's very, very structured in
Yeah.
everything he does. That's for sure.
What would you have done differently? I guess if we look at some of the mistakes you've made specifically, what would you do differently now?
Look, on the business front, I think I don't know if there's much I'd do differently. I'm pretty proud of the product that we produce
Sure. Yeah.
and the team that we have at the moment. Probably some things that I would have done better is there's certain periods where I had staff members which I probably was too busy. I didn't spend enough energy on developing them properly or creating the right structures around it. But I guess I needed to go through that process to learn, right? And now we're really building a really good infrastructure for everyone, the clients, the staff, the brokers. But on the investing side, probably is something that I would highlight is that I made a lot of investing mistakes early, which almost turned me off property. And I've made more money in property than I've made working now because of smart investing, right? And imagine I just gave up after a few mistakes. So in the early days, I bought my first property was actually an off-the-plan house in the western suburbs. And crazy enough, when I bought it, the thing bloody went up hundreds of thousands of dollars by the time I settled it. So I just thought buying off-the-plan properties was invincible. You know, buying another 3 of them, and 2 of them, guess what? When they came to settlement, they were negative equity.
Fuck.
And they just cost me hundreds of thousands of dollars. Couldn't get into my family home after that. Fortunate enough, my career started taking off, and I was fortunate enough. My dad did one thing really good financially, was that he paid off his house and worked really hard to put every cent into it. He was willing to put up his house to guarantee me to get into my my family home in Freshwater. And it was no easy fate. It was a big purchase. I was the biggest mortgage of all of my peers, all my friends at the time, and I was hosting 4 other properties at the same time, right? So I got 5 properties with one giant mortgage, and I was in my 20s, you know. So that was in 2015, I think, that house.
So that's that's monumental. In your 20s. But was there ever a time throughout building the business where cash flow sort of kept you awake at night and you had to make a lot of sacrifices, or was it?
Honestly, never, because I'm quite smart with my numbers, right? I never leave it to chance. I always build buffers, like I said. I practice what I preach. I always had enough cash flow in there. We're always smart with our numbers. Always made sure there was enough fat, enough in the bank account. A lot of business owners make the mistake of, okay, I've made money, I'll spend money, right? I was the biggest tight ass. That was like in certain areas because I needed to have enough buffers in there to make sure that
They call that lifestyle creep, right?
Yeah.
The more money you make, the more you spend.
Yeah, well, they do, but I never got into that. I actually I spend a lot more now, but I'm okay to spend it. But I never spend more than I earn ever. And I've never spent more than probably half of what I earn for my whole life. But if I earn more, I still keep it to this kind of philosophy of spending only half of what I earn.
Some of the things that you see with first home buyers that they do wrong, and one of those is borrowing. Do they typically borrow too much or too little? And I guess people looking at owning dwelling versus owning land, and you know, where you see more opportunity for Australians that might be listening.
Yeah, so look, the first home buyer space is quite interesting because they're quite naive to what opportunities lie in front of them. What I see on a regular basis is that they just want to get in, right? But just getting in doesn't always mean getting the right property.
Guarantee you're going to make a good decision and buy what
you could buy a property. Like if you look at any unit you bought in Sydney, basically between 2015 and then till now, there are areas where units have gone up. And like this area, it's obviously trickled up. But there's areas where you could have bought a unit in 2015 and made absolutely nothing till today's date, right? And that's over 10 years. That's an 11-year cycle. Units are probably on the rise now because of the first home buyer scheme, the cost of construction. But I would say to any first home buyer out there, tune into the podcast, right? Listen to
How I Met Your Broker.
Listen to How I Met My Broker. I'm also featured on Smart Property Investor. We've got the First Home Buyer Show. That one is a really good show for anyone who's a first home buyer, because we actually could dig down into the fundamentals of what you're doing on your first home. There's certain growth markets in Australia at the moment, so certain markets that are very cheap as well, or very high intrinsic value. You want to be getting into the right market. And you've got to be getting into the right asset. It's not always land or unit or whatnot at different times in the cycle. For instance, if you 2 years ago, if you were entering Brisbane market, some houses in some pockets have already hit their kind of a really high price, even a year ago, let's just say. But no one was looking at the unit or townhouse market in Brizzy. In 1 year, in certain pockets, they went up 40% last year. Yeah. Right. I have a unit in a particular area in Brisbane, and I think it was valued at 650,000 a year and a half ago, and today it's worth $1 million.
What's the rationale behind? Is that related to, I guess, the developing infrastructure up there and the Olympics that are coming up? Or is there what's your
not at all? The population's booming.
Okay,
they have a lot of infrastructure projects, so crap load of jobs going on there. The cost of construction has doubled plus, so existing dwellings are way more valuable than they were before. Okay, right, and also they're not building new homes fast enough. We have a massive undersupply in housing. So you put all of those things together, and guess what that's going to do? Then you throw a 5% deposit scheme in there. Holy shit. So you can see what's actually moved the needle very quickly.
The barrier to entry is a lot lower.
You've got so many pillars pushing that needle, and that's what's causing us this housing crisis that they're trying to address by charging more taxes, apparently. Doesn't solve anything. They need to figure out ways to build faster and cheaper, basically.
Someone who, say, is living week to week and struggling to save, obviously maybe someone you wouldn't take on board as a client, but someone you're giving general advice to, and then versus someone who's accumulated more wealth.
Yeah, look, I think somebody's trying to get into the market. It's a matter of sacrifice, I guess. You know, we don't... I won't put it out there like that bloody smashed avocado guy, but, you know, when I needed to save for my... for our deposit or get money for the house or pay for those negative equity properties when it happened, I was living with my in-laws, like, you know, moved back home with the parents, sacrificed. 5 years, right? I was there for 5 years, you know, living there, you know, paying minimal board, which was a few $100s a week to pay for bills, food, electricity, but then really dialing down my expenses to save because I knew there was a bigger picture. Yeah. And I think it's the willingness to sacrifice is the key to it. And obviously when people come in their situation, we don't just turn them away. We always we'll give them the advice to say, I think it's more when they're pushing us to give them something that I don't think they should be given. I think it's just a matter of going, look, you've got to knuckle down. This is the amount you need to get to where you want to be. This is the amount of income that you need. If we can get you there, then we can get you to the next deal. You know?
Do you remember your first client and your biggest setback throughout your journey?
First client was my roommate. It was actually, I didn't know what the hell I was doing. 15 years ago, refinanced his mortgage to a cheap product, and I must have fluked it, got it through the system. Didn't have no idea what I was doing. Right? No idea. Biggest setback was probably that property piece there. You know, if I had understood the value of or understanding the economics of property when I started doing all these transactions in the early run, I reckon I would be probably $40-50 million in front. Like crazy amounts of money, because I understand the strategy, the structure, how to build a portfolio, what makes property tick or grow in value. Yeah. Once I learned that, it was just a game changer. Like I think that probably only happened coming out of COVID. During COVID, when I saw the opportunity, that's when I really started nailing down and really investing.
Do you think when your dad, he was talking about how the value of every dollar and that when you took out such a big mortgage with that property in Freshwater, were you ever, concerned about how your family would react to the potential risk, I guess, associated there? If you, he's the guarantee, right? So if you couldn't meet repayments and you ended up losing the property and that kind of thing, was that ever it could have been a driving or motivation?
It's actually a good question, because I've never thought about that. It's weird because you have, in the Asians, it's almost like their parents, if you're going to buy a property, they will give you anything. Yeah. That's just how we are. But They will just sign anything for you. They don't care.
Yeah.
They're like, if this is for you to buy your home, I know. But I think also maybe I built that trust in him, that he kind of knew my character and what I did prior to it, and how trustworthy I was with numbers and money.
Yeah.
And I obviously had a few other properties to fall back on with a bit of equity to sell off if I needed to. I just didn't want to sell them at the time because they were, I've just obviously settled them. And I was hoping for the growth, but I never got the growth from the orders off the plan. It was like 10 years before they made any money, right? It lost me 10 years on the velocity of money from where, if I had just done the decisions I thought were right, was buying existing houses around Campbelltown is what I thought was the deal at the time for $300,000 a piece. Yeah. Instead of buying these units in Brisbane and all sorts, when the market hadn't moved yet back then. But going back to my dad, like, man, he didn't even bat an eyelid at it, which is insane, right? When you think about it, his whole house was on the line. But I also knew at the time that just post-roll commission was some major changes, similar to what we're going through right now. Yeah. But there's a massive blimp in the market. Yeah. Like right now, I'm loading up to buy more property because I feel like this is the time to get more assets that are going to give you more opportunity in life, I guess.
One of the things that I think you would have questioned is with your mum and dad's health, I guess accumulating all this wealth through the business, has it made you reflect on finance as its importance as it pertains to more than just, selecting the right property, but more so, quality of life and the value and opportunity that it's presented for you?
Yeah, so I think just understanding finance or becoming well educated in finance is important for everyone.
Like financial literacy.
Yeah, correct. Because if you're not financially literate, you're going to have a hard time in life.
Sustaining your loan or...
And I think people get worried about weekly numbers and cents and things like that, but they don't think about... I call it chewing its own fat. And I always go back to the buffers. Yeah. That if I lost my job, if, I couldn't work and I was mentally stressed, and I just gave up or whatever it was. If you had $1 million mortgage and you had a 200 grand in your offset, even if you drew an extra equity loan for 200 grand just sitting there as a rainy day fund, right? Don't spend it. Don't pay anything on it because it's covering itself. It just sits there as a redraw facility. At least that gives you peace of mind, right? Well, put it on the flip side. This is the stuff I'd work with clients with. You flip it on the other side and someone goes, no, I don't want any extra money. I just want to have the mortgage, and all of a sudden they're stressed out. They don't want to go to work. They quit their job, and now their mortgage in arrears, and they're just blaming everyone else. Because they didn't train the financial literacy they needed to understand that having a bigger mortgage doesn't mean that you're making more repayments. Having a bigger nest egg there or something to fall back on doesn't necessarily mean it's worse. It's actually going to be way more favorable. Being exposed to a lot more good assets with more leverage will actually get you a lot further. You might put 100 grand in shares, only get, if you make a 10% return in a year, fantastic. That's $10,000. But you put 100 grand and you leverage 900 grand, and you buy two good properties of 500 grand a piece, and you make 10% of that, you made 100 grand. You've doubled your money overnight. So people don't see the power of leverage, right?
Have you ever rolled the dice on someone who maybe circumstances didn't warrant them taking out such a big loan, and then they've sort of defaulted and it's negatively impacted the business?
Nah, not at all.
Not at all.
Yeah, okay. I feel like we've always got it right. Yeah. Like I can say it confidently because I've never really had that, but I've seen other businesses get it wrong. Yeah. And I've seen people get money. I've seen people come to us and we couldn't do the deal for them, and they found the money somewhere else, and then and then the word on the street afterwards is that this guy's in some shit now because they're running around calling every private lender out there to get money. Yeah. And I'm like, look, I could see the problem before it started, man.
What's one thing that you would want your customers to think when I say the name Strategic Brokers? What would it be?
I think ultimately I'd love for people to say that they changed their lives. I know it sounds crazy, but I've definitely over the last 15 years changed a lot of lives, and the proof is in the pudding, I guess. I could go back to so many different deals where somebody's come to me and presented something, and I've just said to them, look, I see what you're looking at, and can you explain to me why you want this deal? And then they just, my cousin said it was good. I'm like, mate, let's nail this down.
Let's dive into
let's
it.
Dissect it a bit more and just break it out and get into a pivotal moment where they look at it and they go, okay, that makes absolute sense what you're saying here and why this is problematic. And I've seen a sliding door in the moment. Like, for instance, I have a friend of mine who she came to me asking to buy it's like a short-term holiday rental place in the Central Coast. Yeah. Right. Yeah, we came out of the peak of COVID and these holiday rental things went wild, you know. Their prices went like this and she was buying right at the peak of it. And I explained to her the situation is you can't really leverage them. No banks really like lending them. There's like 2 lenders. That's a problem already. When banks don't want to touch them, there's a problem. And I'm like, why don't you think about why are you buying this property? And she's like, oh, look, you could stay there sometimes. We could rent it. Yeah, it'll make money eventually. I'm like, no, it won't. Yeah, like how? Yeah. How is this going to make money? It's in a block of like 1,000 of these hotel rental places. Yeah. There's no you don't really own something that's going to go up in value. Yeah. And then I tuned her in with one of my buyers agents to have the discussion further, and we ended up buying a house in Queensland. Or in Brisbane, and specifically 35Ks from the CBD on an 800 square metre block for 435,000. So this was only about 3.5 years ago. We helped her out with this. What do you think that homestay or that property is worth today? The one that the unit that she was going to buy. The unit, the holiday stay one. It's gone. The one that she wanted to buy that she presented to me. Oh, it's not just the saving. It's like the proof in the pudding. There's over 800 grand in profit versus losing 100 grand.
What do you think about the Airbnb model that you see a lot of people doing at the moment, where they don't actually own anything, but they, rent out these Airbnbs and
it's an interesting one. Look, the arbitrage is good if you can get it right. There's a lot of work involved in it. And more work than people think. The compliance is constantly changing, so it gets harder and harder. So you might be stuck with a rental that you can't rent to Airbnb or overnight.
What should people be aware of when consulting with financial advice?
So I've got the easiest example. I think I mentioned it before. Ask them, what have you done? Can you show me exactly what properties you bought, or what you've invested in yourself and what the results were? So if they can't honestly answer you that, and all these guys out there selling off to plan houses, units or stuff, they don't freaking buy it for themselves. Are you buying this for yourself? So are you truly buying this for yourself? And if you have, show me some precedents that you've done it and where the results were. And then, really then educate yourself before you sign anything on any dotted line. Go and tune into something similar. But I think, like you mentioned before, but there's lots of people who have different degrees, so they study lots of different channels. Studying is studying, man. I went to uni, mate, I learned nothing. I learned along the way. I've done accounting. I thought I knew accounting. I knew nothing about accounting. The way I learned accounting was from running a business or taxation or small business accounting or anything to do with accounting with property. I learned from my own doing. It wasn't from a piece of paper. So be very mindful. You can show 1 million degrees. Just the way you look at somebody is on what their experiences are, the results they've provided for people, and then what they're actually doing to help beyond that. And whether they're a good person or not. Are they a good human being? Let's go back to that. Add those layers together, and I think that's where you're going to get your best outcome.
Was there a moment in time where you realised Strategic Brokers was going to be such a success? And what is your longer term vision with your wealth? Is it just to get as much money as possible, get as many properties, or is it something more broad?
Yeah, so look, I don't really count. Honestly, everyone asks me about, what's your EBIT? Like, are you trying to push EBITDA? Are you trying to scale this up to sell? I'm like, in all honesty, I'm not trying to build to sell. I don't care what the numbers are. I know. I just need to know that we're going to make enough money to be able to keep the engine rolling. Yeah. But I'm not greedy like that. I think what I have in my mind is that I'm accountable to all of these people who work for me. Yeah. What my role in the business is to see everyone grow. I don't want to be in a business where I'm just there trying to, business is making money essentially, but I find that I actually earn more money by helping more people or helping my team members grow and thrive. So I'm really accountable to them and their families, and I feel like that's the core of what makes our business tick. I don't really have any ambitions to the business being anything. We've now being recognised as a top 11 national business, strangely
wow.
enough. Yeah. But I didn't think that it was possible, to be honest. If I look back at where we started, I couldn't fathom where we are now. We're going to have 20 brokers by the end of the year and a total team size of close to 70 people.
Was there a specific moment in time where you go like, this is actually we're going to make it big here? Like, was there, or was it more of just a consistent?
Honestly, just consistently just doing whatever it took. And then when good people wanted to join a business, I'm like, you make mistakes too, obviously, but making, I guess,
more often than not, right? Like learning through mistakes and learning to make the right.
Yeah, we just I think we know the core of our values and the people that we want, and we just keep adding these people to the business. We'll keep adding value to the business as such, and it's just organically kept growing. I have no agenda to keep pushing further, but I just keep having really good people approach me, so and I can't say no to them. I'm like, and they're really wanting to do some great things. So we've got a fair few more brokers wanting to come on, and there's heaps of really quality people who want to be part of this because they can see what we're about.
Yeah. Although it takes up a lot of your days, no doubt, and time building a business, there's obviously other aspects to your life. What challenges outside of the business, whether it be navigating relationships and that kind of thing? I mean, how has that shaped you as a person? And I mean, like what doesn't success solve?
Yeah, I think money gives you a lot of freedom of, or ideally freedom of time. But if you're chasing money too hard, you're not going to be able to free up your time, right? And my problem was always being accountable to everyone around me, and my biggest downfall is when it comes down to obviously not spending enough time with my family. Not spending enough time with my kids. I'm trying to make up for lost time slowly, but it's something that I would recommend everyone or anyone who's listening, anyone in business, anywhere in life, just really prioritize your family and really having non-negotiable time where you spend time with them. When I say spend time, I think it's really doing things with them, not just doing things that are gonna flick the dopamine kicks or whatnot, I think it's really just doing some quality stuff. And I think a lot of people do get this right in Australia. That's something that our country is beautiful about. A lot of the migrants that come in, we don't know this. We just know the way that you look after your family is providing. Yeah. That's what we're taught, right? But, the right way you really look after people or your family is not just providing, but actually providing or enriching them with your time, and really growing them. And, I'm not really good with raising children because I'm so used to dealing with adults. Yeah. But my kids are getting big now, and I'm finding that I'm really having a great time with them, coaching them through their older years now. So yeah, that's probably the hardest or biggest downfall of running so hard, running a business like this, is that you lose track of time. You just keep finding another task, and then you work so hard because you become so passionate about everything that you forget about your family, man.
Yeah. Has that made you consider what the next chapter of business for you might look like?
Yeah, it has. I've actually been transitioning into this next chapter over the last probably 6 to 12 months. Is that I play a bit more of a directorship role. I'm looking after less clients, but I've really reassigned my clients to some of the guys I've been spending a lot of time in the last few years training. And to be honest, they're better brokers than I am now, which means I've done my job. So I can hand my clients over without thinking that, oh, shit, they really want me. No, you actually want these guys because they're better than me now because I'm off the tools, Yeah.
And it takes you a while to get to that point, right, where you can go hands-free. And I think a lot of business owners in the early stages, one of the hardest things they have is losing the baby that they've helped develop. How much trust do you now have in your employees that if you bring someone else on board that they can sort of upskill and educate those new employees to do the job that you want them to do?
Yeah, look, I've got a very, very good team, and I have all the trust in them to be able to manage things without me. I'm finally able to get a bit of freedom and time again. I think I've mentioned I'm going to Bali next week, which will be nice, and then off to Vietnam to ride motorbikes in the mountains for 5 days, then come back and go skiing with the kids for a week. So getting this freedom of time back and kind of, but then in between that podcasting, I'm still working on the business in the background, doing all the important meetings. But yeah, I think it's really, it's changing the way I'm able to do things because the team's just so good at managing without me now. They only really need to call me if there's either a big problem or there's a very complex client which no one else can solve. So, which is I kind of enjoy doing anyway. So it's fun.
I've got 3 questions before we round out the podcast. The first one is, what would make your parents the most proud if we took away your wealth that you've been able to accumulate, but more so related to the person you've become? What attributes and things do you think would make your parents most proud?
Yeah, look, it's a pretty deep question to be fair, but I think this is what I'm probably most proud about is that I was able to help a lot of my brother-in-law, my friends who've all joined the business. I've managed to make them all very successful in their own rights and be able to give them access to be able to build financial freedom. And there's a lot of them. So I think that's probably the proudest thing. And when I look at my dad or think about my mum, I think that is the thing that they would be most proud about as well. Is that my 2 brothers have also come out and now very successful. They're both brokers in the business. Watching them go from no path or minimal path to all of a sudden now they're making career. So it's that's the thing I'm most proud about. I think they'll feel the same way.
So all those people that you've managed to help, in 50 years from now, what do you hope that they remember you for?
Oh, I think they remember me, all clients, friends, family, anyone else. If I last 50 years, that'll be amazing. But he's the guy that changed my life, helped me out. Was a difference between me having an ordinary life to an extraordinary life. So I'd be maybe over the moon if everyone around me had an extraordinary life.
What song are you adding to the Normalist playlist?
Oh wait, you got a playlist?
We've got a playlist.
Oh, I did.
Didn't think about this one.
Wait, is the song for anything? Like
it can be anything, mate. It's just a culmination. Well, I guess I'll just ask him at the end.
Okay, mate. I got to put something in there that kind of matches with who I am. But I like weird music, man. I'll put I love Avicii when he was back in the days. Yeah. So a song that used to always jam me up throughout, I guess, my career was whenever I was feeling a bit down, I used to play Levels by Avicii. I got that on the gym playlist. There you go. Yeah. There you go. So we're adding that one to the playlist.
Awesome. Well, pleasure to have you, mate. Good to see you. And thanks for coming out.
No worries, anytime.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Normalist Podcast. If you enjoyed listening, please don't forget to rate the podcast, or you can subscribe to our YouTube channel for more clips from each episode. You can also follow us on all social media platforms using the handle @NormalistPodcast.